Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a huge update regarding the Panama Canal situation. Will Donald Trump try and take back the Panama Canal zone? Is he destroying the Chinese influence that infested the zone dating back a decade and really in 2017 when they signed a diplomatic relationship with the government of Panama, and Panama recognized Taiwan as Chinese Taipei. They were totally in bed with them. Now they're trying to deny it and say it's not true. But Trump and Hegseth have both made stern statements. There's U.S. troops in Panama doing military exercises, and now there's a forced sale of both of the key ports on opposite ends of the canal that were owned by Hong Kong that they're forced to sell, and they were going to sell in a $23 billion deal to BlackRock that's been blocked by the CCP. This is all very critical. Now we've got an update on this. But guys, I will say before I start this, let's run up the likes in this video, please. This is a call to action. Please like the video, subscribe, all that stuff. But just like the video, see if we can run them up. But let's take a look at this. U.S. secures landmark Panama deal, and it checks the influence in the region. You can see why it's so important. Now, I've talked about this in previous videos. The United States, we used to own not Panama, not the country, but the zone. That used to be ours. You're talking about 72 to 75% of ships that pass through the zone. The total toll revenue is about $3.5 billion, about 4% of the total GDP of Panama, and it's about 75% of the ships are U.S. ships. We built the canal. This is what Trump says. We sacrificed a lot of workers. It was very poor conditions in the early 1900s. The French started the project in the 1880s. They abandoned it because it was so hard. So then we took it on, and it took a decade from 1904 to 1914 to build the thing. And we controlled the Panama Canal zone. Not Panama, but the canal zone. And so we had free passage. It didn't cost toll money or anything like that. But we gave it up for nothing as a show of niceness. Under Carter, that was in the 70s. They signed a joint agreement to limit the U.S. control. And then in the year 2000, we lost all of our control over the canal. And then we see with China, their Belt and Road initiative, this is what they do. They utilize soft power. They're not going for the canal. It's still owned by Panama, and that's what they'll say. But it's all in the script of Belt and Road, their initiative to where they invest in infrastructure to gain influence in certain areas. And this is a total violation of the Monroe Doctrine. It's Chinese influence in Latin America, and that's really shouldn't be allowed. And Trump is saying, we got to look at this, and this cannot be allowed. And that's what really Hegseth is also saying. But you've got this new deal that was signed by Pete Hegseth. It resumes U.S. military presence in Panama for the first time in 25 years. And so now there's military exercises in Panama. And Trump did make a statement this past week alongside Hegseth and said, we don't really know what Trump wants to do, but he's hinted at a potential military action to take over the Panama Canal. I'm not sure that's what's going to happen. No matter what happens in terms of us owning the canal or not, the point of it is there could be a number of things that Trump would want to accomplish here. Free passage, toll-free for U.S. ships, which would be a major hit to Panama's economy, considering 75% of the ships that pass through are U.S. ships, about 25%, or the remaining 20 out of the 25% are Chinese. It's basically U.S. Chinese who uses the Panama Canal, and that's why they bought the ports, because they want to be able to monitor our supply going from the Atlantic to Pacific and vice versa, and that's the big issue. But you could be looking to limit Chinese influence, which Trump has already done. He's already done that. Panama is not in bed with China anymore when it comes to the canal. They've ripped up their diplomatic relationship under the threat by Trump, and that was when Rubio visited Panama about a month and a half ago. But now Hegseth is putting serious pressure on them and saying, look, we're conducting military exercises. We just signed this new deal. As you can see here, U.S. to deploy troops along Panama Canal under new deal. For training, exercises, and other activities under a joint deal that stops short of allowing the U.S. to build bases in Panama, but is also a major concession to Donald Trump. So Panama is bending the knee to Trump as we try and remove Chinese influence from Panama. This is all very important when it comes to global supply, the overall supply chains, and we need the Panama Canal, and we want to have heavy influence, if not completely control the canal. But worst case is we get the heavy influence and we get the removal of Chinese influence from a canal that we built, that we invested $10 billion into, and we've lost over the past decades, but now we're gaining it back under Trump because Trump's got a backbone and he understands that this is extremely important. And this is a huge win for the administration, the fact that we've been able to do this. Now, when it comes to Hong Kong, which is who owns both of the ports, selling the ports to BlackRock, it's like a step backwards because BlackRock is the one buying it. But the point is, we want it out from under Chinese control. And that's kind of the dynamic in terms of that. And then this is another step to where we sign a deal with Panama. Trump makes startling confession about taking over the Panama Canal. Donald Trump says, we're taking back the canal. China has too much influence. Obama and others let them creep in. We, along with Panama, are pushing them out, sir. That's what Pete Hegseth said. And so Trump talking about taking back the canal, it's a statement that's kind of multi-leveled because you're talking about taking back the canal. Does that mean just pushing China out, or does that mean making the Panama Canal Zone part of U.S. territory? It could mean either or. And so that's what we're trying to figure out with Trump and these troops and everything. You would think either way it's a win for Trump. Now, obviously, I don't think in terms of diplomatically it would be very popular for Trump to take military action against Panama to secure the Panama Canal Zone. And that's what it would be. We'd be securing the zone and taking it back through military action. But you could just be looking at getting China out. I think that'd be a major policy win and political maneuver for Trump to remove all of Chinese influence, which we think he's on the verge of doing right now. He's bullying China out of the canal, out of Latin America, out of a very important zone that is extremely critical in terms of the passage of supply from one ocean to another ocean that was originally built by the United States. This is historic, and this is something that other presidents have not done. Even Trump in his first term, when that diplomatic deal was signed, you can tell he's this 2.0 Trump is just all over it. He knows exactly what he wants to do. That's why he's targeting Greenland. He's been way more aggressive. He made a joke about it. Like, think about Trump 2.0. He makes a joke about Greenland in 2019, and they laugh at him, and now he's like, seriously? Yeah, we're taking it over. We don't care. And now Trump also asleep at the wheel a little bit in the first term. There's a lot going on, right? You're trying to get your sea legs. Trump had never really held political office, but now his second term, he's like, we're done with it. Get China out. Within a month of Trump, second term, Rubio goes to Panama, and they rip up their diplomatic relationship with the Chinese, which basically bowed the knee to China and recognized Taiwan as Chinese Taipei. And so that is just the upgrade we've seen with Trump in his second term. Total misperception. Panama Canal under China's influence, officials say. Panama has to do a very, very good job of explaining to the U.S. administration that there is no foreign interference. Well, obviously there was foreign interference. They owned two of the main ports on each side of the canal. And you had a diplomatic relationship with them that was signed in 2017, if I remember correctly. So Panama and their government are trying to play dumb, but it's not working. That's why Rubio went there. They already ripped up the contract. That's why this sale is going to have to happen with the Hong Kong-based company to where they do this. They make investments. They buy surrounding property, and that's how they exude the soft power influence. We know this. We'll see if the deal goes through. The CCP is blocking the deal right now from happening. It's a $23 billion deal. It's both of the ports. We want Chinese control completely out. Now, whether or not Trump wants to take back the canal fully, maybe that's why the military exercises are happening. Maybe the military exercises are just a show of strength to the Chinese to get them out. But if Trump wants to take the canal back fully, it would allow us to save a few $1 billion in toll fees from the use of the canal, which would hurt the government of Panama, or excuse me, the economy of Panama. And also they would have less power because they would lose the right to govern over the canal zone. That's if we took it back. Or we could come to an agreement with the government of Panama and say, well, our ships are only tolled at a 50% rate because we built the canal. And they say, well, we expanded it. It cost around $7 billion to expand it. Back in 2015, 2016, they did do an expansion. But the point of it is we built it. It took 10 years. And now we've lost control to China over a Latin America canal that we constructed. how is this even, how is it possible? So you see how presidents are asleep at the wheel, and now Trump's come back and said, no, we're not doing it. We're taking it back. We're ridding ourselves of the Chinese influence. That's why there's these deals happening. That's why they're forcing the sale of the ports. And Panama is like, yeah, we'll do it. We're sorry. We don't want you to take it over. We need the toll money. It's like 3% of our GDP. That's a big number when you're talking about a country's GDP. We need like the $3 billion, and most of it's from U.S. ships. You guys have 75% of the ships that come through the canal. So, although the traffic on the canal I was reading recently in March was very low, interestingly enough, the point of it is Trump understands how the Belt and Road works. He realizes that, especially in Latin America, on a canal that we constructed, the idea that the Chinese would have more influence than us over it is insane. Now, whether or not you want to take it over, you rid the Chinese influence at the very least, and that's what Trump is doing right now. They're in the process of doing it. Hegseth is doing it. I mean, that's why Rubio was there. Rubio, Trump, Hegseth. They're getting rid of the Chinese influence within the canal zone. They're forcing the sale, and that's why the CCP is not too happy. The Hong Kong company's like, all right, we're going to sell to BlackRock. And the CCP is like, no, you're not going to do that. We need to cling to our influence within the canal. And now you see China throwing a hissy fit. They're like, Trump needs to remove all these tariffs. Trump is making the Chinese very uncomfortable right now because he knows the United States has more global power than China. And China said they want the most global power out of any country by 2050. It's part of their plan. And so Trump realizes that the United States, especially in Latin America, still has to, that we have the ability to exude a significant power and crush this whole little kissing match of Belt and Road Initiative between between Panama and China. Not Taiwan, but I mean, we still support Taiwan as well. We buy their semiconductors. They made a huge investment. We exempted the semiconductors on the tariffs, and I think Trump will support Taiwan if there were to be a war that broke out between China and Taiwan, and I think China would have a very tough time invading Taiwan, and they know that. That's why they're trying to do all the gray zone laws and the manipulation tactics, and they're trying to embed and infect the Taiwanese and force Taiwan to be reliant on China. They view them as a breakaway province. That's what they say about Taiwan. And, I mean, that happened because of the Civil War, the Chinese Civil War, right after World War II. It was going on for a while. And then in 1949, the losers went to Taiwan, and we know how it's impressive how Taiwan's built up their own economy. It really is crazy. And they're pissed off about it. Obviously, China is. But that's another story for another day. The point of it is, this is what we want. We want the elimination of the influence. Now you've got Hegseth signing military deals with Panama to do exercises and really exude our soft power. Now it's time for us to show some soft power within Latin America on something that we built. And we're going to be getting a good deal. We're not going to be paying any tolls, or the tolls are going to be cheaper, or the tolls are going to be free if we just take over the zone fully. Now, I don't know, that you could say, well, that's not going to be popular in terms of the general electorate. They don't like the idea of us taking things over. Yeah, but we're not taking over the country. It's the zone that we built and we gave up for nothing. It wasn't like, oh, we gave it up in exchange for, X. No, we didn't. We gave it up for nothing. We gave it for $1 under Carter as a show of, the Cold War. We don't want to do this anymore. But no, I mean, we need this is in Latin America. It's important. And at the very least, China is not going to have control over it. We can have kind of puppet control with the help of Panama. If Panama wants to keep it and they want the toll money, we can have a joint control, joint ownership agreement with Panama when it comes to the canal. And that's Trump being very nice, by the way. So we'll have a joint ownership with heavy U.S. puppet control over the canal. That might end up being what gets signed. We'll have to see. This is like the first step. I mean, they're already signing deals with us to where we can have military exercises where they say there's no bases yet, but this is going in a good direction for us. And it seems like Panama realizes they have to appease us a lot more than they have to appease the Chinese. So this is looking very good for us and our really puppet proxy control over the Panama Canal zone, over the Chinese, and just get the Chinese out of the canal. That's why the CCP is pissed off. Hong Kong has to sell their ports where they just track all of our supply going from ocean to ocean. That's why they own the two major ports at opposite ends. They own both of them. So there's obviously some pretty big uh, understanding that they're getting key information on our supply going from ocean to ocean. And so, yeah, they're going to have to sell it for $23 billion, whatever it is. I wish someone else outside of BlackRock would have bought it. But, I mean, you need to get rid of the Chinese influence. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.